This video covers regressions. So recall that when we have a scatter plot, scatter plots have a positive or negative correlation. You can draw a trend line to estimate the data. So when we draw those lines, we call them lines of best fit, whether it is linear, an actual line, quadratic, a curved line, or exponential curved line. And the graphing calculator uses it called regressions. So if it does not specify linear, quadratic, or exponential, we need to turn the diagnostic on. Here's how you do it. So these steps are here. We've done this before. So if you click mode right here on the top middle and go up, 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 it takes you to this stat diagnostics option. We need to scroll over so that on is highlighted and click enter. So it needs to look like this. That's step 2. And then to return to the home screen, we click second mode to quit. Now, nothing visible has happened yet, but if you do not do these steps, you will notice a difference as we move forward. So remember, if r squared equals 1 or a negative 1, it's a perfect fit for the data, and these are what the different r values represent. So perfect negative, strong negative, weak negative. No correlation is close to 0, weak positive, strong positive, and perfect. So on example 1, they tell us that the table below is some points for a quadratic function. So because they've told me it's quadratic, I'm going to run that regression. So I'm going to come into my table, clear everything out. Remember, we want to clear out the list, never delete. So I'm going to type these in. As I'm typing, if you find you need more time, make sure you pause the video to type and then play when we move on. So I typed my data into the table. I'm going to click Stat, scroll to Calc, option 5 because this is quadratic, and they told me it was quadratic. So see that r squared value there is a 1, and that will not show up unless you turn on your diagnostic. My equation, it shows me up at the top. So y equals a, which is 1, x squared, plus b, which is 0x, plus c, which is 3. You could also write it as just this because that 0 doesn't really need to be in there. So either of these are acceptable. So we're just doing this over and over today. So example 2, they tell me that this models an exponential relationship. So they've told me what to run. So I'm going to come over here and type these in. And I'm going to click Stat, scroll to Calc, option 0 that we learned in the exponential unit. And my r squared value equals 1. And my equation is y equals a times b to the x. So 1 times 3 to the x is my function for this regression. Now on the back, 3, 4, 5, and 6, they do not tell us what type of regression we need to use or what type of data this is. So we're going to put these in Stat Edit and look at all of them. So we're running options 4, 5, and 0. So once I've typed this in, I'm going to go Stat Calc 4. My r squared value is 1. Remember, we look at r squared, not r. So r squared value is 1. So that's probably going to be my my thing that I need to use. So I'm going to go ahead and write this equation. 1/3 x plus 4. And remember, the top line tells you what your equation needs to be. But they have asked for the other options. So if I go Stat Calc 5 for quadratic, that one is also an r squared value of a 1. But if you notice, a equals 0, so you would just write an x and a c, which is just linear. So if a squared equals 0, but your r squared is 1, it's the same thing as a linear. And then if I go Stat Calc 0, my r squared value is 0.974. So on these, we are wanting you to plug them all in unless your teacher tells you something different. So option 4, I'm going to plug this in. Oops. And remember, if you need more time, just pause the video as you plug in. So Stat Calc 4. So my linear r squared, not r, but r squared is 0.831. My quadratic is 0.988, so that's pretty close to 1. So at this point, if I was only looking at these two, I would say it's quadratic, but let me run StatCalc 0. Oh, there's my r squared value of 1. So this one is exponential. So my equation is a times b to the x, so 1 times 0.5 to the x. Okay, and we're just doing this 2 more times. Problem 5 is an example of mapping. This is something you do in 8th grade. So I'm going to go ahead and write these x's, and then to write my y's, I follow the arrows. So negative 2 goes to negative 21. Negative 1 goes to negative 8, 2 goes to 7, 3 goes to 4, and 5 goes to negative 14. So this is just kind of reviewing you on mapping in case they decide to throw that in on us for some reason, even though it's not a TEK. So I'm going to type these in. Negative 14. So stat calc 4. My r squared value is 0.139, so that's very, very low. Remember, the closer to 0, the worse the data. So this one is very close to 0. Stat calc 5. My r squared value is 1, so this is probably quadratic. I'm going to go ahead and write that. So a, which is negative 2x squared, plus b, which is 7x, plus c, which is 1. And then I'm going to look at option 0 because I have to write my r squared value. Now, if you get this error on an exponential, it means that it's not possible to get an r squared value. So you can just put an x there. Don't leave it blank so we don't think you skipped it. But what this means is that there's no way this data could possibly be exponential, that they won't even tell you r squared equals 0. They just won't let you do it. Okay. And then the last one, problem 6. I'm going to clear this out and put this in stat edit. Because this one has less options, I'm going to click clear out my list. Remember, we never ever delete, we just clear. So negative 7, negative 4, negative 2, and 1, 30, negative 3, negative 15, and negative 18. So stat calc 4. My r squared value is 0.845. Quadratic, option 5. My r squared value is 1, so this will be quadratic. So 1x squared plus b, which is 0x plus c. You could also write this as x squared minus 19. And then stat calc 0 for the exponential. This one also does not work, so you just put an x to say you tried it, and you cannot find an r squared value.